All right, excellent. So we are on session 4. It is Monday, May 2nd. It's already May. It's only 53 degrees in Chicago here today, and we've got a little bit of rain. Hopefully it's nicer where everyone else is at. When we closed up on Thursday, I had thrown out a challenge that we could poke at next, which was the illegal word, which kind of focused on types. And I said we'd cover this on Monday prior to kicking off the actual slides as kind of a warm-up. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. The instructions for illegal word is write a function that takes in a sentence and an illegal word and returns a Boolean indicating whether or not the sentence contains the illegal word. Capitalization should not matter. Okay. So let's go ahead. Sure, I've got the chat pulled up here. All right, so let me fork this. All right, so let's ask ourselves our basic questions, right? So we've got number of inputs.
2
is equal to 2 inputs. The types are both strings, it looks like. And what is our output? See it in
Boolean.
the chat from Michelle, a Boolean, that is correct. So we're being asked to return true or false here. So if I run this, basically we've got 1 true, undefined, undefined. Okay, so we're going to get our 2 inputs here. So let's go ahead and say console.log, and we'll do sentence and word. All right. This is always a good first step so we can see exactly what we're getting in, right? So hello there and fudge. So I know what I'm getting in. All right. So what do we need to do here? We need to take this illegal word and we need to see if it's in here, right? In the sentence. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do this. Like if I were to do this in production, I could use like a dot includes, or I could filter. But if I don't want to use like a built-in to do this, and I kind of want to understand what's happening under the hood, and we're going to work through the mechanics of this. What building block do I need to do when I want to check something against multiple other things?
If else.
Sorry, I didn't hear that one.
If else.
Not an if else. Whenever we need to check something against multiple other things, that usually means that we need to iterate, right? So I need to say, is fudge here, 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 right? Like against each word in the sentence like I'm going to compare it. So I will use an if or some sort of conditional logic there. But whenever I need to compare something against multiple other things, I usually need to use a loop, right? And so I could map, but we're going to go ahead and do a loop. And we don't typically loop through a string. So what could I do to break each word in the sentence into a different data structure?
Turn it into an array.
Yep, so we could turn the string into an array. And so usually when we're looping through something, we're going to be iterating through an array. So let's say let array equal sentence dot split, and we're going to split on an empty space. So now let's take a look at array.
You have a typo on sentence.
Did I just spell it wrong? Oops. Sentence. There we go. Thank you. And it's still spelled wrong. We'll get there. Okay, I quit. Jeez. All right. So now I see each word as its own element. It's basically, I have an array of strings now. All right. And so now I can go in here and I can say for let I equal 0, I less than array dot length, which means that if I add additional words, that this is dynamic, it will always return the length of my array. So as I add or subtract elements from my array, this loop will automatically adjust to whatever the length of array is. And then we're going to increment by 1, I plus plus. All right, so after that, we need to, now we get into our conditional logic. And so basically what we need to do is figure out if this word appears anywhere in here. And once it does, the README is say write a function that takes in a sentence in a legal word and returns a Boolean indicating whether or not the sentence contains the illegal word. It does not tell us that we have to figure out if it's in there 3 or 4 times, if it's at the beginning or the end. So what we can do is if it's anywhere in here and it returns true once, we can stop and we can be done at that point. And so we can say if array I is triple equal to word, return true. All right, and as soon as we hit that return, we're done. And then we could do a else here and say return false. But quite honestly, if we're just looking for one condition, a lot of times what you'll see is it written just like this.
Do you need to account for the upper and lower case within that statement?
We do. Yep, that is the last part of this. So capitalization should not matter. So, but we're going to do it iteratively. So we've basically, we got our sentence and word, made sure that that would come in. And then we saw what our array looks like. Now we're going to iterate through our array. And so we don't need to have this down here anymore, and clean that up. And that. So we can do this, right? And so now we've got a true, a false, and a false. Let's see here. So array I, and I would expect that we would see for this one that this would be true at this point. So let's go ahead and console.log array I. And let's zoom in on this one. False. We never hit the true. So we hit but. It didn't say fudge. For let I equals 0, I less than array length, and I plus plus. Get rid of that. Oops. Why am I only doing one? I apologize, because does anyone see what I did wrong here? So I left my return false inside my loop. So the first time it loops through, I do but, and then I return false. Remember, the return is the last thing that a function will ever do. So I never loop through again. And what I want to do is basically loop through every word until I hit true. But if I've looped through every word and I never hit true, then I want to return false. And there's my true. All right, so now, and I believe that was you, Steve, that brought it up. So we're still getting false for the third case, right? But I didn't say fudge. Fudge is lowercase. This fudge is uppercase. So what we would need to do is basically take, I would take, just to be careful, I would take both of these and put them to lowercase or to uppercase. So I could say to lowercase and word dot to lowercase, and get rid of this. Whoops, and I probably don't need a function call here. Okay, definitely do. So what did I do wrong? Well, we got rid of two of them. JS sends to lowercase.
Is to lowercase in lowercase?
It very well could be. It sounds like something I would do. No, to lowercase is camel cased. And let's see here, sends.split to lowercase is not a function. So that is why. So here, again, I'm flailing around over here. Right here is my error. To sends.split to lowercase is not a function. So basically what this is telling me is that, remember, these happen in order that you read, just like if we were reading a sentence. So from left to right. So what I've done is I've split the sentence into an array, and then I'm trying to run to lowercase, which belongs to string.prototype on an array. And that's why it's yelling at me. So I should be able to solve this by changing the order that I'm in. So now this is still a string. Now everything's being sent to lowercase. Now I'm splitting it into an array. And there we go. There's all three of our truths. Right? And so I can say console.log array. Right. And so now we can see that every word in here has been sent to lowercase. It should be false on the first one. So that's what this bang in front, I think someone, Michelle called that out earlier. So remember, the bang operator is the opposite of what it basically, it's the reverse of whatever you're looking at. So this should be false, but bang this is true. And typically a passing test is a true value. And so that's why that bang operator is there, and why we want to see true on all of them. Right. So, because like if I do hello there fudge, right, now I'm false. Does that make sense?
No.
Cool. All right. So any other questions about what I did here? Let me go ahead and open up a new notes REPL for tonight.
Hey, Charles, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
So I hope this isn't a stupid question, but why is the solution not like a pretty straightforward true false? or if else, excuse me. Like what would go wrong? How would the code break if it weren't just like if word equals fudge, right? Return false, else return true. Console.log, I get the correct answers. Like why, like I'm not understanding the complexity of that, since case doesn't matter.
Well, so let me, and it's not a stupid question, and I just want to make sure I understand what you're asking. So the complexity comes in is that I am doing exactly what you said, but I'm doing it to each single word, right? And so the complexity comes in from needing to iterate or loop through what's going on. And so what's happening is, again, there's built-in methods that we could use to make this much simpler, but for learning purposes, like I said, I'm generally taking the more verbose way of doing this. And so what's happening is I'm taking a string and I am basically splitting it into an array, and I'm taking each word and making it an element in the array. Right, so let me grab this over here. Right, so let that is basically turning into this, right? And now as I come down in here into the for loop, what I'm doing is I'm saying all right, and so basically like I'm coming and I'm looping, and then right here, if array I, so this is my array, I is the count starting at 0. So array box 0 is hello equal to fudge? It is not, so I do not return true. And then I loop through a second time. And I say, is there equal to fudge? It is not. I loop through a third time. I say, fudge, is it equal to fudge? It is. I come into my if statement, I return my value inside my if statement, which is true. And if I deleted fudge back out of here and I said like, hello there, Charles, right? And then is Charles equal to fudge, then I never come in here. I'm done with my loop. I come down here to line 14 and then I return false. And all this is doing, and this is doing up here, is basically just taking all of the words and moving them to lowercase, because the acceptance criteria said that capitalization should not matter. So I'm just taking capitalization out of the equation altogether. Is that clearing it up, or am I not answering what you're asking?
I don't know how to answer that. I don't know how to answer your question. Yes. No, I get what you're going through. I get what you're explaining. And I appreciate the explanation on rotating through the array.
Right. And I mean, to be honest, like what I would do is say return, like, so this, like I said, this is the long way around, right? So I could do this and get rid of this in this, and then I could say, whoops, I need that still, and go return array dot includes word, right? And so, and again, because I haven't done So I could do 2 lowercase here. And then put my bang back in here. Right, and that gives me my trues as well. Right, and I mean, even past that, I'm pretty sure I could do this. Right, and then I don't even need this anymore. Right, and there's my trues. So like, if I was solving like, if I went into work tomorrow morning and I said, do this because it's going into production, that's what I would type. Right, so, but when I do this, right, and like the same thing, like if you ran into this exact same problem on the code platoon application and you submitted this, they would say, do it without the built-ins. Right, like we want to, because this doesn't help for understanding. If you don't know how a loop works, like this isn't helping you at all. And so that's why I take it the long way around. Does that help make a little more sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. For what did I break? Open, open, close, close, close. For line expression expected. That's young in TypeScript. Oh no, I'm in trouble. Ah, that's why. All right.
So to build on Scott's question, if we use index of, we would have essentially been asked to turn it into an array.
I'm sorry, what's that?
If we use index of, we would have been asked to turn it into an array on the part 2 of the application.
Possibly. I mean, if you used an index, did you solve it with index of?
Yeah.
Can you drop your code into chat? I mean, it just depends, right? Like, and again, what they're looking for is that you understand what you're doing, and that it wasn't just like you did Stack Overflow and you copy pasta a line of code in that makes it work. Let's see here. So let's call this one a legal word 2. All right, so we're saying if sentence dot index of word 2 lowercase is greater than 0, or sentence index of word 2 uppercase is greater than 0, then return true. And this is that. So
now that you put the code in there, I have a follow-up question. What is the greater than 0 doing in there? I understand it makes it work, but I don't fully understand. Oh, never mind. I forgot. It just means if it's more than, never mind. Ignore my question.
no, it's fine, because what it's saying is you're getting the index of, and so the only issue I think that you would run into with doing it this way is if we did this. All right, so this is false. And do you know why? So what's happening is you are returning the index. So this is saying sentence index of, and then you're getting the index of the word in the sentence. And this is a 0 index right here.
Okay, yep.
So, and what my guess is if we do console.log this, and you could still make this work with this format, but if we do this, and let's say that, let's go ahead and comment these ones out, and let's run this. Oops, what did I do here? If two lowercase console.log sentence index of, I'm sorry, I missed that. Oh, all right. So when the word is not actually found in there, it returns -1. I think I had kind of thrown that out there. Sorry, I'm gonna get cat bombed here. My wife just left today for a business trip to Nashville, so everybody wants to come hang out with me. This is Mo. Hey, buddy, you're famous. Yeah. So we could say basically then is like greater or equal to 0, and past that we could also, I would make the, whoops, oh geez, come on, dude, make this even easier by just saying like sentence dot to lowercase index of, and then you could get rid of this whole or operator, right? And so now you're basically just sending everything to lowercase. You don't have to send everything to uppercase or to lowercase. Past that, because you weren't, I don't believe you were, this was doing, so that's the other thing, is to uppercase is all caps. So to uppercase would catch this, but it wouldn't catch the other one. But now if we do greater than or equal to that, and then get rid of everything over here. These, right, because now if it's not in there, it actually returns a -1. And so things at the 0 index will still get caught, right? So this would be a valid solution as well here. And then closing. And you are correct that you don't need the opening and closing brackets, but even though it's optional in JavaScript, it's almost always used. So, and then we would take this, like this to that, that. Oops. All right, so that would be about right here. All right, so it'd look like that. And let me copy that back into the chat for you. All right, so but yes, there are multiple different ways to get it done, and I think I deleted it, but yeah, I mean, again, single line in production, the way that I would do it would basically be to do that. And take this here. So, all right, that's that one. Any other questions on this one? All right, so let me go ahead, open up a new REPL. Four. All right, so session 4, object literals. We've already been working with objects now. In fact, we were basically, I mean, covered them pretty much in every session that we've had so far. Objects are going to be a huge part of what you will work with going forward. It's a very common, very important, very flexible data structure that's used in JavaScript. It's a data type that holds a collection of properties where each property is an association between a name, which is a key, and a value, right? So we talked about key value pairs, right? So that is kind of, so if you're doing a coding problem or you ever have a quiz or someone's talking to you and you hear the term key or someone says key value pairs, that's your clue when you hear that you're going to be working with some sort of an object. Right. So example presentation or representation, let person, first name, last name, eye color, age, and basically you can do you can represent nearly anything with an object. And they hold different bits of information. So an object, literal keys and values do not have to be just string data types. They can be other data types as well. So our object is organization. The name is a string, code platoon. The type is a string, nonprofit. Topics is an array of strings, right? So we've got HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Python, soft skills. And then cohorts is a nested object, right? And then the first key in here is actually a number. And then the first value in here, they have set as an array. So let's use a simple object literal example. So let organization, name code platoon, type nonprofit, access value by key dot syntax. So let's go ahead and start building out our object. Right. So we could say let organization equal an object. Right. And so we can say name code platoon. It's always comma separated. We've got, yeah, buddy, I know. We did type is non-profit. All right, so just starting with that here. So if we do console.log organization, right, there's our entire object. And notice that we've got name. So here's something else. So we can do full name, right? So we've got full name. But if I do this, notice I'm already getting an error here, right? So there's no spaces in keys. So we could do something like this. All right, we can get that. Right, notice how it went from white to green over here. And so now we've got a string as the name of the key. So like there's different ways to do it. Typically though, just to keep it neat, what we'll usually do is try and keep it to the basically just the keys without the quotes on it. And let's see here. So, okay, so access organization name. So dot syntax versus bracket syntax. So again, same thing here. So if I want to see the name of the organization, I can enter the dot syntax and same thing. So I believe if I do this, right? So I can't do dot syntax with a string name here. So notice I'm getting like the red error message, right? Full name, it's an unexpected string. So what I can do though is I can get rid of the dot notation and take it to bracket notation, right? Or box notation. And same thing here. If I take this back out of a string, right, I still get it this way, but I also have the flexibility of going back to the dot notation. And this is why this style is typically more popular, right? Like if I needed full name, then instead of doing it as a string, is I would just do it as a camel case variable name. Any questions on any of that so far? All right, so when in and used beside an object, it can check for containment or containment against the existing key. So if name in organization console log true, we can even take it out of if, I believe. So we could just say name in organization. I don't know if that'll do it or not. No, name is not defined. How did we do it over here? Sorry, so they did put it as a string. So do this. Right, so that returned true. So say years in organization. Right, now we get false. So let me just do all right. Okay, so so we can do it this style, or we can use a built-in, which is has own property. right? And we see that that returns true. All right. And let's see here. So objects have lots of built-in methods. So object has own property, which we just looked at, which is a Boolean. Object.keys returns an array. Object of keys, object.value returns an array of object values. Object.entries returns an array of key value of the object when iterating through it. So let's go ahead and give our object a few more things here. So see if we skip back to here, it looked like we were doing topics, cohorts, right? So we can say here, and of course it does that. HTML, CSS, script in Python. And then same here, we could do let's do 2019 is hotel India kilo, and then 2018, 2020 would be Mike. Oops, Juliet. Kilo, Mike, and November. All right, so that would be, so now we've got a string, a array of strings, and then a object with keys of a number with values of array of strings. All right, and so now if we start looking at some of these other built-ins that we have, all right, so we've got object.keys. Come on, buddy. Sorry. So this is another one. So organization.keys is not a function at object. So before, when we were calling built-ins, like we could do has own property, with object, it does work a little bit different sometimes. So if I do object.keys, organization, I believe this will give me what I'm looking for, right? And so name, type, topics, and cohorts, right? So name, type, topics, and cohorts. And then console.log on object.values. And we can do station, right? And so there's all of our values. So keys, values, right? So here is an array, right? So the first element, and so again, same thing, like first element in this is, or 0 is code platoon, then nonprofit. And then we've got our array with our different class topics. And we've got our object, which then also has the additional items nested inside it. And then I believe it was entries, which should give us the both of them here. So if we do console.log entries, deletion. All right, so we've got in one array, we've got name. So we've got the key and the value. In the next array, we've got the key and the value. In the third array, we've got the key and then the value, which is another array nested inside it. And then the last one is the key with basically the object as the value. And then inside each of these, there's further. So again, same thing that we do here. So I could say, let entries equal object.entries, and then I can console.log entries here. Right, and notice how this doesn't change. And so if I take these and this so that I only have entry showing, right? So now if I want to start digging in, right, so I can say entry 0, right, and now I've got my first array, right? And then I could say entries 0, 1, and there's my value, code platoon, right? And so entry 0, 0 would be name, which is my key, right? And so the same thing here, if we go to entries 3, right? So now I'm in the fourth one, which is cohorts as the key. And then, so if I want to see the key, again, just back to 0, right? And so now if I want to see the value, there's the value. And then if I just want to see the 2019, because now I'm in an object, there's 2019. And then if I want to see the last value in there at the third index position, which is the second index, sorry, third item, second index position, 0, 1, 2, there's that. And I can get all the way down to Juliet. But you can see basically how, and so this is basically like a key concept here, right? Instead of guessing what I need to type in to get in there, and this is still a fairly simplistic piece of data. I can show you like what a production data object looks like for like an applicant to the military with 147 points of data that could be nested across 20 or 30 different objects. And you have to basically dig in, mine into that applicant object and pull out one piece of information that you need. And maybe you know exactly where it's at, but if you don't, one of the great ways to find it is to basically do just what I did, which is to do it one step at a time, right? Because it's easy to get lost, or if I don't know where I'm going, I can just put in some numbers and take a stab. And if it's nowhere where I needed it, or if something like this pops up, right, undefined. So this doesn't, like, it's the last one because I just changed it. But if I just put these numbers in and I get an undefined off the top of my head without seeing this up here, let alone if this is tucked into a database somewhere where I can't even readily see it, I don't know which one of these values is wrong, right? Like there's nothing in my error message up here. It's just an undefined. I'm not even throwing an error that's telling me what I did wrong. And so doing it one step at a time allows me to see if I got the first step right before taking the second step. All right. So that is it for where we're at with the slides. So the rest of the evening is going to be challenges. It's about 7:34. I'm going to pause for questions here. And then I think we can take like a quick 10-minute break so I can drink something, and then we can get to challenges. Does anyone have any questions for me before I pause the recording and then start the break?
I have one. Just to make sure I get this correctly, on that last line that you have, you put in a series of numbers in there, number 3, number 1, number 2019 number. That's really just a way to narrow down that one specific piece of information that you want out of the whole set, right?
Yes. Yep. So like if I go back to here, right, I'm at entries, which is all the different things. And this is on entry. So this is me making the object a little bit more difficult. I've broken it out into an array. The same thing happens with the object itself, right? So I can just do console.log organization, right? And here's the actual object, not broken out as different like arrays, or that was just to demonstrate like the built-ins. But I would do the same thing here, right? So like if Rod Levy, the founder of Code Platoon, came to me and said, hey, I need to know the name of the 3 cohorts that we did in 2019. Well, basically what I would do is I'd say, okay, well, I'm in organization. We're going to take a look in cohorts. All right. And so let's take a look in cohorts. Right. So now I'm just seeing the cohorts, right? And then 2019. Right. So there are my 3 cohorts in there. And basically, if you said like, what was the second cohort we did in 2019? Okay, need that. Right now I'm down to just one data point. Right. So I have an object. I traverse the object using the key. I traverse the nested object. So this is another object using the key. And then I traverse the array using the index position. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. And I will say, guys, this has probably been the quietest class I've had. So what I would say is, if anything takes the pressure off you, you're watching me, a quote unquote senior developer with years of experience at this point, screw some of these things up, right? I don't get it right every time the first time. Throw questions out there. There are no dumb questions. They're like, don't be embarrassed by the questions that you ask. Everyone in this room is new at this. And quite honestly, by asking more questions, you're probably going to be someone's hero, because you're not the only one with the question that you have, right? Like there are other people that have the exact same question that you do. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and pause it. And let me pause the recording. Okay, welcome back from the break. A little code demonstration, and now we're going to take a look at the next challenge, and we can take a look at trying to solve this one together, and then we'll pick one and we'll break out into groups and then come back and do the solution together. All right, so alphabet code, and this is my first time doing this one. I believe this is a newer challenge. Okay, so we have a README of write a method that takes in an uppercase letter of the alphabet as a string and returns an integer corresponding to its place in the alphabet. I think there's a couple of different ways that we could solve this. First off, though, if we look at number of inputs is equal to 1, right? And the type of input is a string, and the type of output is a number or an integer. All right, so I think, and there's a couple of different ways that we can solve this, right? So one way is we could look at doing it as an object, right? So we could do let alphabet object equal a1, right? And so when we do that, we could do console.log alpha object. Oops, sorry. A. And if we run this, oops, sorry, not calling my function. So alphabet code. And I'm not even really using letter yet, but we'll just call it with A. Alpha object is not defined because I called it alpha object, not alpha obj. Alphabet, oh boy, I am all over the place. A is not defined. So I think probably because I did it in the box without quotes. There we go. So that would return 1. All right, so we could do that for every single one through here, right? And then next thing would just be to wire this up as letter. Right, there's 1. If I did B, right, there's 2. And so that would be one way to handle it. Now, I believe it was Steve, you had done the index of, right, off the string. So I would think that we may be able to solve it that way as well, right? So we could say let alpha string equal A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And then we could always return alpha, well, here, we won't return anything yet, so we could just do console.log alpha string dot index of, and let's just call it A right here, right? And my guess is that would give me an index of 0, right? Index of 0. So all of them could just be add 1 to it, right? And so if I did E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, and Z, and with the test of Z, hopefully returning 26, right? There's 26. So this would also, this to me is a lot easier to type in than to do this over and over again, right? And just space wise and the cleanliness of the code, right? Because it would look like this by the time we're done with it. And then lastly, we could even take a look at doing the same thing with an array, right? So we could say let alpha R equal A, B, C, and then we could do the same thing is that we can do, so index of is one of those built-ins that will do, it works for an array and a string. So we could say alpha R dot index of, let's feed it C, right? And again, my guess is that it's going to give me 2, right? 2. So we could just add plus 1 to it, and that's going to give us that. And so same thing, and all three of these are valid ways to solve this, but in my mind, like this one takes up the least amount of space. So this would probably be the one that I actually move forward with, right? So if we take U and we'll cram U up here, there, let's go ahead and comment U out, and then all I would do is take this and do return alpha string index of letter plus 1. And let's wrap this in a console. Right, and we would expect this to be 2. This would be 26. Right, and that would be 4. Right, 2, 26, and 4. So this would, to me, would be a pretty eloquent solution. I mean, 2 lines of code, basically.
Can you go over the object solution? This is what cost me all the time when I was trying to solve this. I tried doing an object and I guess I don't fully understand objects. So I guess could you just go over like essentially the console log alpha object letter?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
guess where.
Right. So remember, when we want to traverse a array, we do it in index notation, right? So basically this is 0, 1, 2, and 3, right? So if I do console.log alpha r box notation 2, I would expect that the equals C. Right, there's my C. And so that's basically how we get around an array. The way we get around a object is by doing that same dot or bracket notation, but objects don't have index values, they have keys, right? So this is array index value, this is object and key, right? And so when we give it an object a key, it will return the value to us. So if we set all of our keys to different letters of the alphabet and then give them a corresponding value, because it's the same thing, right? Like if I change this to an F, right, this is determinant on this being in this order, right? Because now if I do alpha R2, instead of returning like the C, I'm going to get F, right? And so these have to be in a specific order. Now, with objects, I'm doing it in a specific order to make it easy for humans, right? So I can do Z 26, Q, I have no idea what letter of the alphabet Q is, let's say 17, right? And now these aren't in order anymore, right? So I could do this and let's clean this up a little bit. Right, but if I give it alphabet Z, it doesn't matter where it's at. It's finding that key and then it's giving me my value, right? And so as humans, we put things in order to make it easier for us to read, but the computer doesn't care. I mean, like I said, so right, this doesn't throw off what I've got going in here, right? Like all this is doing is saying, find this key, tell me the value assigned to that key, right? Because it's the same thing, like I can say that, and if I give it the key of Z, it's going to return that value, regardless of where it looks like it is inside the object. And so this is the most robust answer, because same thing, like if I did a typo and I accidentally swapped M and N, right? And then I'm asking for the index of, and I've got a typo in here, then, and this is harder to see a typo in here than it is in here, I'm just going to be returning the wrong value.
Why did, was it necessary to turn Z in the console log into a string?
It is because I'm doing it inside a bracket. So because it's just that, I'm pretty sure I can do this. All right, there's my 26.
I think that's the issue I had. I don't think I turned it into a string. And if I remember right, it just returns undefined or something, or some error. I think that's the mistake that I made, that I spent way too long trying to solve.
Yeah, well, and so remember, like, and I put it in here, right? So if you have a variable style, so no spaces or quotes, right? You can do it as dot notation, or you can do it as bracket notation, but you do have to add the quotes inside the bracket. And then if you do have it as a string, you can only access it through bracket notation with the quotes. And if it makes you feel any better, it took 4 developers like 45 minutes today to find a spelling error I made in a variable name. So, and we're all looking at it for like 45. It doesn't go away. It's just part of your life now if you want to be a software developer. So yeah, so that's where we're at with that. Does that help? Does that clear some things up for you?
Yeah, no, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome, cool. So let's see here. That was the alphabet code. And next. So alphabet code was up there. Rectangle is super easy. Gravity is pretty easy. Rectangle too. I think we're about done with just types at this point. So we could look at caffeine control, which is somebody with a caffeine dependency. Do I have that? I don't want to set up professional audio and audio settings. Go away. Caffeine control. Okay. So let's take a look here. We've got a read-me every weekday. You drink caffeine to get ready for the morning, Monday. You need 800 milligrams to wake up from the weekend. Tuesday, you only need 600 milligrams. Wednesday and Thursday, you only need 400 milligrams. With Fridays, you drink 900 milligrams because you have a problem and you refuse to admit it to anyone. Because you know you'll be staying up late and going out with friends. You prefer buying small energy drinks that contain 150 milligrams of caffeine each, and you don't mind getting kidney stones. Write a method that takes in the day as a string and returns the minimum amount of caffeine drinks that you'll need to buy. All right. So let's break up into groups for this one. We're going to, we'll do, let me fork this here real quick. And then before I forked it, I should have done this. And drop that into the chat for everybody. All right. So with this, let's talk about the basics here. right? So I need so I have an input, which is a string. And I have an output, which is a number, which is the minimum number of drinks that I need to buy, right? So if I'm buying, so on Thursday, like they're giving us a little hint here, right? If I need 400 milligrams of caffeine and I'm getting 150 from each dose, that means I need to buy 3 cans to get 450, right? So 900 would be, right? So that would be 6 cans. So you're okay to go over. We want to return a whole number here. And it's how many drinks would you need to buy to hit the minimum threshold for the caffeine based on the your requirements and the increments of 150 milligrams each. Now, there's a couple of different ways to solve this. Probably the most common is going to be like an if statement or some sort of conditional logic. So I will go ahead and pause recording. Well, or actually before I pause recording, any questions that anyone has about this for me before I pause recording and set up the breakout rooms? Okay, pause recording. All right, so if we were to look at drinks here, I'm guessing most everyone did some method of a chained if statement, like if else. Did anyone do a what's referred to as a switch or a case statement?
We considered it, and then simply didn't know how to move forward, so we didn't do it.
Okay, no problem. So let's take a look here at drinks. We'll start with Monday. All right. So when we look at the README, we've got a basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we've got a specific amount of caffeine needed for each day. Now, the way I would tackle this is to kind of declare what I know already, right? So I can say caffeine, we'll just call it C per drink is equal to 150, right? So I know that stays the same no matter what. Like each of my drinks come in a unit of 150. And then I have caffeine needed, which is going to vary from day to day, right? So first off, I could say if day equals M, right, then C needed is equal to, is it 800, I believe, right? And then I can continue from there, right? And so at a very basic level, I could just do if statements for each one, right? So Tuesday, and I believe that was 600, right? And I could keep going. But to clean this up a little bit, I could say else if that, and then keep going. Else if day equals Wednesday, C needed is 400, else if day equals Thursday, C needed 400. So here is a very famous coderism. Does anyone know what the acronym DRY means?
Don't repeat yourself.
Yep. So that's exactly what it means in that horrible way I just spaced this, right? So dry, so, and it's basically, it's called dry code. So don't repeat your code. All right. So do we see some repetition right here? Right, both of these are 400. So taking a look at that, probably the first thing I would do is this. Right, and then I can get rid of this whole thing right here. And we'll just change this to Friday, and we'll make that 900. All right, so that saves me one additional entry. And it's not necessarily wrong if I do it that way, but this is just a way to clean it up and make the code a little bit more readable. Then what I can do is return basically C needed by C per drink. And again, this isn't going to get me all the way there, but it's going to get me part of the way there. So oops. All right, so if I do this now, so if I run it through on Monday, right, I've got 5.333. So I know that if I do, I can't buy a fractional drink. So if I'm thinking a fractional drink, I've got to buy the whole thing. What's the next step that I can do to get myself even closer to the correct answer here? Right, so let's go
Somehow
ahead.
round up the 5.3 to the nearest whole number.
Yep, so let's look at JavaScript rounding up.
Math cell.
What's that?
I was just saying how to round up math cell.
Yep.
Oh,
So if I get in here into the MDN and look at math, so rounding, so basically the nearest integer, so that'll take me down or up. But if I look through here and what Yazid's saying is math.ceil, which is ceiling, so function always rounds the number up to the next largest integer. So we come back in here, caffeine, and so I could take this whole thing and wrap it in math.ceil, right? And it even tells me what's going on in here. Then I run it, there's my 6, right? And so now if I do Wednesday, I would get 3, right? If I do Thursday, I would get 3, right? And then if I did Friday, I should have 6, right? So that looks right to me. Now we can, this would be one way to handle this. The other way would be to do it as a switch statement. All right, and so a switch statement looks just like this. And so with a switch statement, they also get called case statements all the time. So here's your switch. Here's your day coming in. And then instead of having to write if else over and over again in different cases, you're basically just saying like that if else, right? This is basically being replaced with this. And so when it comes in, and then in this instance, I don't have anything to worry about, but when you write a case statement, typically you add a break in there just in case there are multiple cases that something can fit into. And so like for this instance, where I push Wednesday and Thursday into that or statement, this is called falling through, right? So when I hit this case Wednesday, because there's no break in here, and break is like a stop, it basically tells you to exit the case statement and to continue on with the method. Basically, I hit this, nothing's here, but there's nothing stopping me from going to the next one, right? And so I hit here, and because both Wednesday and Thursday, I want it to return 400, right? And then Friday, and I don't have a default case for this one. I could put a different message in there or whatever, and then that way, like, so I could just change this to, right, and so that way, if I do this, and I say it's Saturday, right, now no caffeine is needed. But same thing if I do Wednesday, comment that one out. All right, there's my 3, and same thing if I do Friday. All right, there's my 6. So this is the same thing as this, it's just a slightly different way of writing, right? And you don't have as all the like the comparison, you know, have all the brackets, the SL statements. So this is generally, especially if you get into really big things or that you're matching something a little bit more complicated, like this is a popular way of doing it. And then I will also do this. So here's the example of the switch statement on MDM. That's a legal word. Just drop this in right here. So that's the link to a switch statement. So any questions about what I did with this? Okay. All right, so we've got about 13 minutes left. Let's see if there's another challenge that we can do as a
What's the type? Caffeine needed? What is the type?
for
Because we have let caffeine needed. Is it a variable?
yes.
what- Yeah,
So remember when you do this, right? This is instantiating, like bringing your variable into existence. This is assigning your variable a value. So this is 2 different things at the same time. And they can be split up on different lines. Right, so right now up at the top, if I do console.log caffeine needed, I get, that's that undefined. I know that's really hard to see, but it's basically returning undefined because I have said caffeine needed exists, but I have not assigned it a value yet. So the default is when nothing is assigned is undefined. Right, and then I come through my switch statement, and depending on what day of the week it is, I'm assigning a value to caffeine needed. Right, so whatever day it is, and then once I get down here, by the time I get down to this math, basically Kathy needed is going to be one of these corresponding values.
So then if you did console log, it would return what?
Yeah, so if I do console log down here, after it's been assigned a value, it should return me whatever value corresponds with the day of the week that I put in. So like for Friday, I would expect to see 900, right? And there's my 900.
Does JavaScript have type? Like you could put console.log type caffeine needed?
Yeah, I believe it's type of. Don't know if it works in here, but
But it's still undefined.
yeah, JS type of. I just don't think replit allows it here, maybe, or so type of. So let's try this console log caffeine needed type of. Okay, there it is. So it's just not a built-in on that. So if we do that, it's a number.
Ah, okay. All right, thank you.
Yep. All right. So let's see here. Any other questions on that?
I think Jose had one in the chat.
Let's see. Rather than caffeine needed, could the day not have been assigned the value and then divide the day by 150? Yeah, I mean, well, you could do it as a object, I suppose, but this is like the day is a string, right? So like up here, up there, like it is a string. And so we're comparing day, and that's basically what this is doing down here too, is it's saying the switch is based on the variable day, which is a string, which is a single letter. And then does it match this? If yes, do this. If it matches this, do this. If it doesn't, skip over it. And so you wouldn't really assign the day a value. That would be confusing because you're changing the type, like you're changing it from a letter to like a string of a letter to a number. And usually you want to avoid doing things like that. So like, yes, I could technically go through and assign M, like, so case if M equals, or like if it, so I could just say day equals 800, right? But now instead of day being a corresponding day of the week, day is equal to the number 800. Right.
Yeah, the way that we were working it like that is because, I mean, the number is not going to change. So we were trying to define Monday as 800, Tuesday as 600, and then we were going to take, like console log the day divided by 150 and see if it would work, rather than have it, I don't know, varying somewhat.
Well, so we could do it as an object, right? So like here, I won't screw with this one, but let's do it as an object. So let's do const drinks 3 equals day, right? And then so I could say const days and calf, right? And call this an object, right? And then I could say M is 800, and then T is 600, and then W is 400, and then R is 400, and then F is 900, right? And then I could say, let's do this. We'll do const calf per drink equals 150. And then I could do return math.seal. It would be days and calf day divided by calf per. And this should work as well. Right, and this is just doing it without any control logic. And then so if we did console.log drinks 3 and did M, let's do that. All right, so there's our 6, which that is correct. And then the same thing if I did Friday, there's 6. If I did Tuesday, it should be 4. Right, so this would be a way to do it as well.
Yeah, that's exactly how we were working, and we just missed the return, Matt, the last line on how to define it.
Yeah, no, this would be, I mean, a perfectly fine way to do it as well. So, yeah, I mean, like, and again, you see these little things next to them, and it's like flow and types. So, I mean, either one would work. And I mean, these are just more like what they're focusing on, not necessarily how you have to solve it. Okay, so 8:57, 3 minutes left in class. We will continue this tomorrow evening. If you want something to poke at, go ahead and take a look at FizzBuzz. You can also look at any of these other ones, kind of go to the bar, what's your grade, old enough. These are all fairly straightforward. Like they're not difficult. FizzBuzz will be what we lead off with tomorrow evening, or I might cover it after I hit the slides, but this one will take a little bit of time. And this one is honestly, excuse me, is like a huge interview question, either coding it live or solving it on a whiteboard or having just to walk through it by talking someone through how you would solve the problem. Like FizzBuzz gets used a lot. And then let's see here, control flow on this. And then we'll probably, I mean, we'll take a look at detention, I believe is a pretty good one. Blackjack is pretty straightforward. I think Rivers is brand new, so I haven't done that one yet. So we'll probably poke at that one. And then Camel Case is should be a good one as well. Were there any other questions for me before I pause the recording for the evening? And I'm trying to remember if I turn the recording back on. I might not have.